Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, good afternoon, students. Okay. So before we start, any questions which you could have? Good afternoon. Yes, everyone. Good afternoon. So many people. Nice. Okay. So any questions with respect to the previous chapters? Yes, we could take that up. A lot of people are posting their questions. So if you have any question, you could also post because payment of tax is not a very lengthy topic. Some important pointers we will take it up. We'll of course go through the entire topic itself, but we will also concentrate on the in that topic what are the important aspects. But we have time, so you can take this opportunity. Any questions, please raise it. Hardik has a question on e-way bill. Okay, let me just go through the e-way bill matter. So you see the note, the question of Hardik is it required that we raise a e-way bill in case of cases where the value is less than 50,000, right? Or is it necessary that for any job working charges, should we raise a e-way bill? Yes. E-way bill is to be issued even if the value of the consignment is less than 50,000 in case of any interstate transfer of handicraft goods, right? Similarly, the provisions related to job work also say that e-way bill needs to be issued even if the value of the consignment is less than 50,000 in case of interstate transfer of good by the principal to the job worker. Okay, with if it is a intrastate sale, then if your consignment value is more than 50,000, then you will have to raise a e-way bill. But if it's an interstate transfer, that is, you are located in one state and your job worker is located in another state. In that scenario, you will have to raise a e-way bill even if it is less than 50,000 rupees. And second question was, what happens if there is movement from an unregistered person to another unregistered person? Then either the transporter has an option to generate the e-way bill. So the transporter will be obliged to raise the e-way bill in that scenario. Tambeshwari, your doubt, yeah, you can unmute and ask your question.
Sir, I ask you that, sir, part A is furnished by the information, the transporter and the agency. But, sir, what difference between information furnished and provided by consignee or consigner? Sir, in there I confused, sir.
Consigner and consignee details you will mention in part A.
Yes, sir. It is provider, information provider of consigner or consignee, and the information furnished by the transporter and agencies.
Yeah, so this e-way bill has two parts, part A and part B.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the consigner will fill the details of part A, and then part B will be filled by the transporter. And
Yes,
if
sir.
the e-way bill is raised by the consignee, then he will fill in the details in part A, and part B details will be filled in by the transporter.
So, sir, why written is however the information in part A may be furnished by the transporter and by e-commerce operators in books, page number 12.10.
Yeah. So in cases where the supplier or receiver does not enter,
Yes,
okay,
sir.
in a
Yes, sir.
case where the supplier and recipient is not registered, in such scenarios, the transporter himself can enter the details. And since e-commerce also is involved in certain transactions, in those scenarios, e-commerce operator can fill in those details.
It means कि part B always the transporter can the information it's furnished and the part A in the when the consigner and consignee not furnish the information, then transporter and agency furnish the information. And
Correct.
right,
So
sir?
part A, what you're saying is correct. Where the part A is not generated by the consigner or consignee, then he will fill the details. The transporter will fill the details. But
Yes, sir.
part B is not always transporter. If the transporter gives you itself the details, then the consigner or the consignee itself can fill the part B.
Okay, sir.
Okay, like
Okay,
suppose
sir.
I am a transporter and I'll tell you that you have come to me saying that you want to transport goods from Bangalore to Chhattisgarh. So I will tell you that for this I will need a separate lorry, and this is the lorry number. If I give you that details already beforehand, I will give you that vehicle number, then you can also fill in the detail in part B.
इट मीन सर अगर वो कंसाइनर का व्हीकल है तो कंसाइनर पार्ट भी जनरेट कर सकता है इंफॉर्मेशन. अगर वो कंसाइनी का व्हीकल है तो वो कंसाइनी कर सकता है. अगर वो किसी तीसरे आदमी को एजेंसी को देता है तो एजेंसी पार्ट भी फिलअप कर सकती है.
कोई भी कर सकता है, करेक्ट. अगर
कोई भी
किसके
कर
पास
सकता है.
इंफॉर्मेशन है वो कर सकता है.
यस सर. अगर वो रीअसाइन करता है तो रीअसाइन कर सकता है.
करेक्ट. रीअसाइन केसेस में रीअसाइन होगा.
ओके सर. थैंक यू सर. ऑल द पॉइंट्स आर क्लियर सर. थैंक यू सर.
Yeah, Sanya, your question is with will an e-way bill required of custom sealed goods are transporting from port to place of business? Yeah, from port to place of business, if it is getting transferred, then it has to be on a e-way bill. But if it is from one port to another inland port, then it is still a customs area, then it will not be required. But anything coming out of customs to your business, that is called as DTA, domestic tariff area. Anything what is cleared from the customs is coming out because you have paid the duty. Then in such scenario, when the goods moves out of the customs area, we can pay the customs duty on the import part. If both the parties are URP, no e-way bill or e-way bill is issued by the transporter. E-way bill will be issued by the transporter. If both are unregistered, then the transporter will enter the details. Okay. If there are no more questions, we can start with today's topic. Okay. So we understood registration, we understood the returns also more or less. Now we'll talk about payment of taxes. Once return is filed, in income tax, you have an option that you can file your income tax return. But is the payment mandatory there, or payment is not mandatory? Can you file your income tax return without payment of tax? Anybody who's having experience in filing income tax returns? If you are saying yes, maybe. If you are saying no, if you are saying without payment, we can file return but not pay the tax. Okay. So it is not mandatory that you have to pay the taxes. You disclose your income. If some TDS is deducted, that you will consider. And if there is any extra liability to be paid and you don't have the money, can you still file your returns? Yes, income tax has that provision that you file your returns without payment of tax. That is also possible under the income tax. But is the same thing possible under GST? That monthly returns, when we are filing, we have a liability. From that, we have some input tax credit. We have taken some input tax credit, and still there is some liability. Can I file my returns without payment of tax? Everybody is clear. Yes, we all your answers are correct that we cannot file your GST returns without making payment of taxes. So the returns and payment of taxes go hand in hand. Without payment of taxes, your details are ready, your sales is ready, your input is ready, but there is a liability for which you do not have cash balance in your bank account and you're not having sufficient funds. So you're not able to file your returns. Because of that, you cannot file your returns because to file the returns, unlike income tax where you disclose all your details and file the returns and you can pay it later on, in GST, it doesn't work like that. GST says that pay your taxes, only then you can file your returns. Without payment of taxes, you cannot proceed with filing your returns. That is a distinguishing back factor between income tax and GST. Now, we know what all taxes goes to whom, right? CGST goes to the central government, SGST goes to the state government, and UTGST, if there is a union territory, it will again go to that respective union territory. If it is IGST, it will go to the central government. These are the major tax payments what we make. Then again, TDS payments and TCS payments are there. Again, TDS will be bifurcated into state and center, CGST, SGST. If it is IGST, TDS, then it will go again to the center. Similarly with TCS. So CGST, SGST, IGST, TDS, and TCS, these are the types of taxes. Apart from taxes, what all do we pay? We make payment of interest, we make payment of penalty, we make payment of fees, which is late filing fees and any other payment. So apart from tax, we have other payments also. Tax, interest, penalty, and late fees are the major payments. Now, how the structure works is once you get registered under the GST law, ledgers get generated, which gets logged in or kind of gets assigned along with your GST login. Once you log into your GST portal, you will find 3 ledgers coming up. One is called as electronic ledgers. One is there are 2 categories. One is prepared and updated by the taxpayer. Our taxpayer itself will key in the details and it will get updated. Other type of ledger is one which is prepared and updated on the basis of the returns. Okay, what returns we file, basis that the ledger gets updated. So first is which is prepared and updated by the taxpayer is electronic cash ledger and electronic credit ledger. So there are 2 types of ledgers. One is electronic cash ledger and electronic credit ledger. So whatever cash payments we make, from that it gets added to the electronic cash ledger, and whatever input tax credit we claim, right? In our GSTR 3B, we had seen, right? So in the 3B return, once I enter the credit, what I am eligible to claim, from that, this electronic credit ledger gets passed. And third ledger is the electronic liability register. This liability register is basically how much liability you declare in your returns. From that, this liability register gets triggered, and this liability register gets increased as and when your liability in your return increases, you show more tax payable, the liability will increase. Then how will it get reduced? By making the payment. So this will get linked with the electronic cash ledger. Once you make payment in your cash ledger, this will get reduced. Okay, we'll understand this in detail, but at the surface level, have you understood that you will have three ledgers? Electronic credit ledger, that is whatever input you have, you will claim it. That will go through your electronic credit ledger. Whatever cash movement happens, you will make payment from your bank account through NEFT, RTGS, or any modes to the electronic cash ledger. That's like a bank account with the GST portal. Okay, you are having some balance in your bank. Now you want to make some payment to the GST. You will make the first payment to the electronic cash ledger. From the cash ledger, you will make other payments. And then the third ledger is your electronic liability register. That will give you the liabilities, what you have ascertained in your returns, and based on your assessment, because every law has a provision for assessment saying that whatever we have done, basis which there will be some assessment. So once that assessment is done, that if there is any resulting liability from that assessment, that also gets added to your electronic liability register. Okay. So here I have a question. Can I add? Can I add some amount? I have some cash. Can I deposit that into my electronic credit ledger? Cash cannot be converted into credit ledger. Yes, everybody is saying no, you cannot make the payment of your cash in your credit ledger. Your credit ledger has to be your credits, what you are claiming. So we cannot make any payment in the credit ledger. It can be only deposited to cash ledger. Correct. So any payments what you want to make, it can go only to your cash ledger. Credit ledger only showcase the available ITC which can be used. Correct. We have to deposit in cash ledger only. So you are aware of the cash ledger provision. Very nice. So once we know this background, let us get into this one moment. Okay. So once we know the cash ledger, credit ledger, now we'll get into what all we will cover under this topic. One is payment of tax, interest, penalty, and other amounts, how it is done. This three ledgers, how they are maintained, cash ledger, credit ledger, and liability register. Then how we can utilize the input tax credit. We have seen in the first chapter itself that there is a rules of utilization that is coming from this section 49A. Then under 49B, what is the order of utilization? First is utilization, second is order of utilization. The method of utilization is 49A, then 49B is order of utilization. Then section 50 is on interest on delayed payment of taxes. Okay, interest on delayed payment of taxes comes under section 50. Whatever interest we have to pay will all come under section 50. Then 51 talks about circumstances in which TDS becomes applicable or TDS becomes mandatory. 51 is TDS, 52 is ECS, which will be deducted by the e-commerce. And 53 is transfer of input tax credit, because whatever input tax we have, that has to get transferred, right? In the second class, if you remember, we had discussed on how the taxes get transferred from one state to another state, because you would have paid IGST, but the other person will have to get credit of the respective state taxes. So how will that transfer happen? That is explained in section 53, and 53A talks about transfer of certain amounts. So this is what we will cover in our session today. Basic is liability on supply is determined in monthly returns. How does the liability get determined? Will the officer come and decide and tell this is the liability? No. There is something called as self-assessment. Section 59 says that your liability will be decided by the self-assessment. So we will do our self-assessment, and the liability on our supply is determined in the monthly returns presently, which is called as GSTR 3B. So 3B is the only return. GSTR 1, GSTR 2A, GSTR 2B, they are not returns. They are all helping us to claim the credit. So the return is only one, which is GSTR 3B. But payment is made through different sections. Liability is in a different section. Return is in a different section. Payment is made through various other sections. Liability not paid completely in cash, because why should we pay completely in cash? I have made sales of 1 lakh rupees. On that, I have collected tax at 18%. So I've collected 18,000. Should I pay the whole 18,000 rupees? No, I should not pay 18,000, because I already have paid to the government indirectly through my credit. So I will pay the 18,000 what I've collected through credit. If I have 10,000 credit, I'll pay the 10,000 through credit, and balance 8,000 I'll pay through cash. Okay, the provisions of CGST are made applicable. Like if you see the CGST Act, you have so many sections, but you don't have so many sections under IGST Act, because there is a borrowing section called section 20 under IGST Act, which says that whatever provisions related to payment, relation to returns, related to assessment, the CGST Act will apply to the IGST Act also. Since the section 20 borrows the power from the CGST Act, that's the reason it will be replicated in the IGST Act. So there are no multiple provisions. Section 20 is the only provision which borrows these provisions from CGST to IGST. So does it apply to SGST? No. SGST, each state has to pass it. So whatever sections are there under the CGST law, those sections are there in the respective state GST law also. So if there are 171 sections in the CGST Act, okay, that is Central Goods and Service Tax Act. In the Karnataka GST Act also, KGST Act or Kerala GST Act, there will be replication of all the provisions there, because this act is being passed through the state legislature by the state houses, and CGST is passed by the center. Okay, since CGST is also passed by the center, IGST is also passed by the center. So IGST says, okay, the provisions of CGST will be borrowed into the IGST law. Okay. Now, the relevant rules and the forms to maintain the ledgers. So first is electronic liability register, which is there in Rule 85. Rule 85 is electronic liability register. Rule 86 is electronic credit register, credit ledger, ECRL, electronic credit ledger, is Rule 86 and Rule 87 is electronic cash ledger. You don't have to remember these rules, but just for your reference, I'm mentioning here. Now, how is this mentioned? They have a format for any form filing. There is form. Similarly, here, how to maintain this liability register? There is a form called Form GST PMT01 for liability register. For credit ledger, it is GST PMT02. For cash ledger, it is GST PMT05. Okay, these are the forms and the relevant rules where these three ledgers are maintained. Now, there shall be three running electronic ledgers which is maintained on the dashboard of the taxpayer by Goods and Service Tax Network on its portal. On the GST portal, once you register, these three running ledgers will be there. One is liability register, ITC ledger, and cash ledger. First is tax liability register. Liabilities of a taxable person in the form of tax, interest, fees, or penalties, okay, is recorded. So whatever liability we have to pay, taxes is also liability, interest and penalty, anything, whatever we have to pay to the government, that is the liability that will appear in the tax liability register. Tax liability register will reflect the total tax liability of a taxpayer after netting for a particular month. So in a month, if you have made sales of 1 lakh rupees, 18,000 is the tax payable, 18,000 minus input tax credit of 10,000 rupees, 8,000 balance will appear in your tax liability register. Okay? Then we have ITC ledger. In ITC ledger, what we will have, all the input tax credit, which is self-assessed in the monthly returns, will get reflected in the ITC ledger. The credit in this ledger can be used for making payment of tax only. Very important. The ITC ledger can be used to make the payment of taxes only. This ITC ledger जो है, इसको आप सिर्फ टैक्स के लिए यूज कर सकते हो. You cannot, not other amounts, that is interest, penalty and fees cannot be made payment from your electronic credit ledger. Okay, so if you say you made lot of purchases of say and 10 lakh rupees and you have 1,80,000 as a credit, okay, now you have filed your returns and you have filed your returns late. So electronic credit ledger balance is 1,80,000 and you have no sales. Okay. But filed return late. So when you file return late, what all will trigger? What all liability will trigger? Interest. Interest will trigger. What else? Interest under section 50. You're right. Interest under section 50 will come. Penalty. Okay. What else will come? There is late filing fees. Okay. Called as late filing fees, which will trigger. Now, will there be any interest on this? Interest at 18%. Okay. So 18% will be on what value? There is no sales, so no value. So 18% of zero only, because there is no other liability what you have. And I've mentioned clearly here that there is no sales. So if there is no sales, interest will be zero. So interest ultimately is 0 rupees. Right? Then penalty. Penalty will be for late filing penalty. That is, the officer is empowered to do it. So while filing my returns, I will not pay any penalty. And this, I will have late filing fees because I have, say, filed the returns late by 5 days. So 5 into 100 rupees, I will have liability of 500 rupees. Since this is no interest, no penalty, only late filing fees, and I have credit ledger balance of 1,80,000. Can I can I pay this late fees from this and adjust this? Correct. Everybody is saying yes, you cannot make the payment of this from here. So this is not possible. You cannot utilize your electronic credit ledger for payment of your late fees. The liability from your cannot be utilized from your credit. So this late filing fees has to be paid in your electronic cash ledger itself. So you have to deposit 500 rupees in your electronic cash ledger. This 500 rupees will go to your electronic liability register and it will utilize the cash what you will deposit and then it will be paid. Your credit will cannot be utilized. You cannot utilize your credit for payment of your late filing fees. Okay, so the credit will be carried forward to the next month. Yes, everybody is clear and you have given me the right answer. You cannot utilize the credit ledger for making payment of your late filing fees. Similarly, if there would have been any interest and penalty, even that I cannot utilize it. Clear. That is what this is saying, that ITC ledger you can use for making only tax payment and not any other amount such as interest, penalty and fees. Then finally cash ledger. Cash ledger reflects all the deposit which is made in cash. So whatever payments you are depositing in cash will go to your cash ledger, and the TDS and TCS, whatever the government is deducting TDS or the e-commerce company is deducting TCS, that will also get added to your electronic cash ledger. Okay, so that will get added to your cash ledger and this information will be reflected on real time basis. The ledger can be used for making any payment of tax on account of GST. Making any payment that sorry, it's not tax, it is, this ledger can be used for making any payment. When they say any payment, it can be any payment of taxes or interest or penalty can be made utilized from the cash ledger. Late fees is assumed value? No, it is not assumed. They will define it. The law in the rules will define saying that what will be the late fees. So late fees will be generally 100 rupees for late filing of GST or 3B. For late filing of GST or 1, there will be different late fees. So every late fees will be specified in the law. It is not a assumed value. Appeal fees can be utilized from credit ledger. The appeal filing fees cannot be utilized from the credit ledger. It cannot be. Which TDS and TCS? Under GST law, we have TDS and TCS, Nayan. That TDS, not the income tax TDS and TCS, that cannot be utilized here because that is a different tax, direct tax. This is indirect tax. Both do not handshake. So that and this should not be merged. Details in this ledgers will get auto populated from the return details. Okay. Output tax, where from utilize? Output tax you can utilize from your credit ledger first, and then if you have sufficient credit been exhausted, पूरा आपने क्रेडिट को यूज कर लिया है, तो फिर आप कैश लेजर से यूज कर सकते हो. ठीक है. आपका क्रेडिट जो है ऑलरेडी पड़ा है, आप उसी को यूज करोगे ना, आप कैश तो नया नहीं पे करोगे. सो आपको क्रेडिट यूज करना है तो क्रेडिट यूज कर सकते हो. जो भी आउटपुट टैक्स है वो लाइबिलिटी में आएगा, फिर आपको क्रेडिट यूटिलाइज करना है, फिर कैश यूटिलाइज करना पड़ेगा. Both the ITC ledgers and cash ledgers can be utilized for payment by the taxpayer for discharging the tax liability and other liabilities arising out of demands and appeal orders. These ledgers will be updated on a real-time basis. Balance in the cash or credit ledger may be refunded. Okay, where if you satisfy the conditions of refund, then your balance in your electronic credit ledger can also can be refunded, and cash ledger can be refunded anytime. Suppose आपने liability आज इस महीने का था 1 लाख रुपीस, तो आपने क्या किया, बैंक से पेमेंट करते वक्त एक जीरो एक्स्ट्रा डाल दिया, तो आपने कैश लेजर में 10 लाख रुपए पे कर दिया है. ठीक है. नाउ आपका लाइबिलिटी बनता है 1 लाख रुपए, तो बैलेंस 9 लाख रुपीज आप वहीं पे रखेंगे या क्या करोगे आप उसके? आप रिफंड लोगे. करेक्ट. सो इफ यू मेड एनी टैक्सेस एक्स्ट्रा in your cash ledger, you can go for a refund of it. So your refund will be possible whenever there is a liability, you have discharged the liability, or फिर कुछ balance बचता है. Suppose while filing the return, okay, you thought it is 1 lakh, but actually while filing there was something you missed out and there was additional liability of 1 lakh. So to the extent of 2 lakh rupees, you can utilize the cash balance, and the balance of 8 lakh which is lying there, you can apply for refund and get it. Okay. But can you do the same thing in your credit ledger? कि आपने किसी से परचेज किया, he's given you the credit and the balance is lying in your credit ledger. Can you claim the refund? It will not be on real-time basis, Abhishek. It will take time. Based on the officer's processing, you will get the amount back. Bhaskar Das is saying no, credit ledger balance cannot be refunded. What is others' view? Yes, but after some procedure. Okay, so if I comply with the procedure, then I will get it. Yes, refundable, fulfill some condition. But say I am a chartered accountant, I have credit of 1 lakh rupees and I have made very less sales. Can I claim refund of this? You cannot claim. Okay, somebody is saying conditions, or the main condition is you cannot claim the refund. Okay, Pallavija, claim refund more than a certified copy of CS required, still you will not get it. Because to claim refund, who can claim refund? Only two category of people can claim refund. One is when you're making zero rated supply. What is zero rated supply? Exports, not only exports, exports and supply to SEZ. Okay, exports and supplies to SEZ, these both are called as zero rated supply. So once you do a zero rated supply, or your input tax rate, the rate of input when you're buying it is 18%, and when you're selling it is 12%. Or when you buy, you're buying at 18 and 12, when you're selling it is 5%. That is called as inverted duty structure. मतलब आपका इनपुट पे जो रेट है वो ज्यादा है और आउटपुट पे रेट कम है, तब आप रिफंड अप्लाई कर सकते हो. सो ओनली इन दीज टू केसेस यू कैन अप्लाई फॉर रिफंड. इन ऑल अदर केसेस, आपको नहीं मिलेगा. So you will not get the credit in cases where your input credit is so very high and you don't have any sales, you're closing down the business, still you will not get the credit. So cash ledger and liability ledger are different. Yes, electronic cash ledger is only deposit of cash. Okay. And the liability, what we ascertain is your liability register. So cash ledger and liability register both are different. Yes. So when you close down your business, Pallavi, only in that case your electronic credit ledger will get lapsed. Otherwise, it will not get lapsed. There is no expiry date or validity for that. There is no such that you have electronic credit ledger, your sales are less, you're doing at a loss, and your credit ledger will get lapsed. ऐसा नहीं है. So it will never get lapsed unless you close down your business. लाइबिलिटी रजिस्टर अपडेशन, वंस यू फाइल योर रिटर्न्स, हार्दिक आपने रिटर्न्स फाइल किया, ऑटोमेटिकली आपका लाइबिलिटी रजिस्टर ऑल्सो गेट्स अपडेटेड. एंड during assessment, adjudication, then if there is some liability, then they will also update the liability register. So liability register updation happens by both the ends. You can update it by filing your returns, and the department, if they ascertain any liability कि आपका liability decide हो गया है, then the amount will get added in the liability register. How can I find the liability register? There is a liability register in the portal itself. When you log in, you have an electronic liability register that will give you the detail. Online transactions, what do you mean, Karan? Will liability register be only online transactions? Not necessary online transactions. What can be offline transactions? Everything, your returns and everything happens online. But if the officer decides something offline and is giving you notice, that also will get updated in your electronic liability register. Uh, can we prepare GST in offline mode? No, we cannot prepare GST or 3B in offline mode. It will always be in online itself. You cannot file a GST or 3B in a offline mode. Appeal order, what say? Appeal order when is being decided, that can be done offline. But उसका liability also आपको online में ही दिखेगा. Order can be offline, but the liability will be online. Okay. So both the ITC will be utilized for discharging the tax liability, will be updated on real-time basis. Balance in the cash, as we said, discussed on the refund portion. Now, how does this liability register works is that credits whatever in the you make the payment of tax. You make the payment from your electronic cash ledger. All the credits will happen. That is, whatever payments you make through cash, through bank, NEFT, RTGS will be added through your credits. Then from the cash ledger, it will get debited for whatever tax we pay. Just cannot be building up, right? You just cannot have reserves. It has to get utilized. So make the deposit from your cash ledger that will get credited, and then it will get debited for whatever payment of taxes we make. Okay, then in your electronic credit ledger, what will happen? Whatever is the credit we are claiming, all this input tax credit on self-assessment basis will be added to our credits, and then any payment of output tax, whatever we make, will be debited. Okay, similarly, like your bank account, कि आपने बैंक में कुछ क्रेडिट आ गया है, फिर उस पे खर्चा करोगे, आप किसी को पेमेंट करोगे, तो क्रेडिट आएगा, फिर डेबिट होने पे उसका बैलेंस कम हो जाएगा. सिमिलरली इलेक्ट्रॉनिक कैश लेजर में भी वही होगा. जो भी आप डिपॉजिट करोगे वो इलेक्ट्रॉनिक कैश लेजर में क्रेडिट होगा, फिर जब उससे आप टैक्स पे करोगे तब वो डेबिट हो जाएगा. करेक्ट. तो फिर इसका मतलब क्या हुआ? आप उतना ही डेबिट कर सकते हो जितना क्रेडिट है. ठीक है, डेबिट ज्यादा होके क्रेडिट हो सकता है. इज इट पॉसिबल दैट आपके कैश के बैंक अकाउंट के बैलेंस में 1 लाख रुपए है और आप 1,50,000 रुपीज विड्रॉ कर रहे हो? इज इट पॉसिबल? नॉट पॉसिबल. करेक्ट. तो वैसे ही समझना चाहिए, इलेक्ट्रॉनिक कैश लेजर में भी जो भी हम क्रेडिट करेंगे उतना तक डेबिट कर सकते हैं, और क्रेडिट लेजर में भी वही होगा, जो भी हम क्रेडिट क्लेम कर रहे हैं उसको ही पूरा यूटिलाइज कर सकते हैं. उससे ज्यादा कुछ करना है तो आपको बैंक में डिपॉजिट करके फिर कैश लेजर से यूज करना है. आरसीएम का पेमेंट कब करते हैं? उसका आरसीएम का पेमेंट भी हम रिटर्न्स में ही करते हैं. रिटर्न्स में आपको आपका लायबिलिटी डिक्लेयर करना पड़ेगा, फिर आपका मतलब आपका सेल्स डिक्लेयर करना पड़ेगा, और जो भी ट्रांजैक्शन है जिसके ऊपर आपको आरसीएम पे करना पड़ेगा उसे भी वहां पे डिक्लेयर करना पड़ेगा, और डिक्लेयर करने के बाद लायबिलिटी ट्रिगर होगा. ठीक है, लेकिन आरसीएम का इंटरेस्टिंग पार्ट क्या है? आप आरसीएम पे करते ही वो उतना अमाउंट आपके इलेक्ट्रॉनिक क्रेडिट लेजर में आ जाता है, तब जो आप पेमेंट करते हो उसको आप क्रेडिट भी यूटिलाइज कर सकते हो. ओके. इलेक्ट्रॉनिक कैश लेजर में क्या है? इलेक्ट्रॉनिक कैश लेजर इज समरी ऑफ ऑल द डिपॉजिट्स व्हाट वी मेड बाय द टैक्स पेयर, ट्रीटेड लाइक अ बैंक अकाउंट विद द गवर्नमेंट. ओके, लाइक हाउ यू हैव बैंक अकाउंट, वैसे ही ये बैंक अकाउंट जो है आपने जीएसटी पोर्टल में ही एक नया बैंक अकाउंट खोल दिया, उससे आप टैक्स पेमेंट के लिए यूज कर सकते हो. डेट ऑफ क्रेडिट इज रिसिप्ट ऑफ सीआईएन फ्रॉम द कलेक्टिंग बैंकर. जो भी आपका कलेक्टिंग बैंकर है वो सीआईएन जनरेट करता है, तब उसे क्रेडिट हो जाएगा. बस आपके अकाउंट से क्रेडिट हो गया ये जरूरी नहीं है, आपके अकाउंट से डेबिट हो गया तो पेमेंट हुआ, वैसा नहीं है. जब बैंकर गवर्नमेंट के अकाउंट को ट्रांसफर करता है, दैट इज द डेट ऑफ क्रेडिट इन योर कैश लेजर. Date of credit in the treasury of the state government or central government is the deemed to be the date of debit. ठीक है, and not the actual deposit. जैसे आपने आज चेक दे दिया है तो आपका क्रेडिट कैश लेजर बढ़ जाएगा? नहीं. अगर आपने पेमेंट चेक के थ्रू दिया है तब चेक क्लियर होके जब वो गवर्नमेंट अकाउंट में जाएगा, दैट विल बी द डेट ऑफ डेबिट. नाउ पेमेंट ऑफ टैक्स क्या फीचर्स है? पेमेंट ऑफ टैक्स इज इलेक्ट्रॉनिकली जनरेटेड. आपको कैश के कभी कभी पेमेंट कर सकते हो, बट इट विल ऑल गेट इन योर इलेक्ट्रॉनिक कैश लेजर में ही अक्यूमुलेट होगा. Then facilitation for the taxpayer, because payment is made all online, it facilitates the taxpayer और उसका record भी online मिल जाता है. Will I receive any interest in this cash ledger? This is a Chalu boy. He's telling that, sir, you're telling it is like a bank account. So when I deposit some money in my bank account, they will give me interest. So if I deposit some money in the electronic cash ledger, will they give you interest? Tell me one thing. You're talking about savings account, but if you have extra balance in your current account, will you get interest? You will not get interest, right? So this is also like your account with the thing which is like a current account. So you will not get any interest in your electronic cash ledger balance. Okay, बस आपका cash ledger safe हो जाए उतना काफी है. Don't expect any interest on that. Convenience of making payment online. Anytime you can make payment. Nothing like a fixed hours. Anytime you can make the payment of the taxes. Logical tax collection data in electronic format. Faster remittance of tax to the government. So the taxes also pays also fast and goes to the government also fast. It is completely paperless transaction. Speedy accounting and reporting because everything is maintained there. Electronic reconciliation of all receipts, simplified procedure for banks, and all your challans become stored at one place. So it's called as warehousing of digital challan. So these are the features of the payment of taxes. Legal provision says when is the payments to be made. If there's any intra-state supply within the state, you know that it will be CGST and SGST. If it is a union territory, it will be CGST and UTGST. If it is an interstate supply, it will always be IGST. Apart from GST, we have other payments, which is TDS and TCS, which is like collection by somebody else on your transaction. That will also get added to your electronic cash ledger. Apart from this, other than taxes, what else we make the payment? We make the payment of interest, penalty, late filing fees, and any other payment. Liability to pay GST is always on the supplier, and in some cases, it is on the recipient. That is, in case of imports and in case of reverse charge basis, the supplier will not make the payment, the receiver will make the payment. And notified cases of intrastate supply of services, that is, when there is intrastate supply of services, the liability is cast on the e-commerce operator. Okay, so liability will be paid by whom? Supplier in the normal situation. The receiver in case of import of goods and services and reverse charge basis, and in certain scenarios where the e-commerce is operational and he is notified, because certain e-commerce operators only are notified. If they are notified, then they will make the payment of the taxes. Okay, payment of tax, interest, penalty, fees, or any other amounts can be made. How? It can be made, payment of taxes can be made through internet, online mode. Through which mode? Through credit card, debit card, UPI, or IMPS. Okay, and through offline mode that you don't have online login details and things like that, then generate the challan from the GST portal and go to the bank and give a NEFT form. What is this NEFT or RTGS? That is real-time payment of transactions. You can go to the bank and give this NEFT form along with the challan. That was also possible. Now, if you're saying, no, I don't have any balance in my bank, I have only cash. So government is saying we want to discourage the cash transactions. So you can go to the counter and make the payment of taxes through cash. But this over-the-counter business cannot be more than 10,000 rupees. So if you have liability of more than 10,000 rupees, you cannot make the payment through cash. You have to make the payment through bank itself, because cash के through payment over the counter, मतलब counter में जाके cash जब जमा करते हो, तब you can make payment only to the extent of 10,000 rupees. But this 10,000 rupees will not be applicable in certain situation when the deposit is to made by government departments. Government department को छूट दी गई है that आपको 10,000 के ज्यादा भी कैश है तो भी आप पेमेंट कर सकते हो. Then when the proper officer, मतलब the officer who is doing any investigation is called as a proper officer, or any officer who has given the rights, he is a proper officer. When any proper officer or any officer who is authorized to recover outstanding dues, किसी के ऊपर order pass कर दिया गया, now he's not made the payment of taxes, there is a recovery officer. Now this recovery officer goes to the person and finds some cash. Then he can take a request permission and get this cash deposited in his electronic cash ledger. Or proper officer or any officer authorized for the amounts collected by way of cash, check, or demand draft during any investigation or enforcement. One is recovery officer. In this case, it is recovery officer and any recovery officer, and he is recovering through any attachment or is saying any sale of movable or removable properties. So उससे क्या होगा, उससे जो भी बैंक से आएगा ठीक है, लेकिन अगर यहाँ पे सेल ऑफ मूवेबल प्रॉपर्टी है और कुछ कैश आता है, that can be deposited. So first is recovery officer, second is a proper officer authorized for the amounts collected by way of cash, check, or demand draft during any investigation or enforcement. During any investigation or enforcement, if there is some recovery, that can also be done. Okay. And the fourth scenario is deposit to be made by persons notified by the commissioner. If the commissioner feels that some businesses deals only in cash and there they have to give them permission, there the commissioner can give a permission to deposit the amount in cash. Okay. So deposit to be made by government department or a recovery officer, for a investigation and enforcement officer, it can be done. Ad hoc deposit means without any liability. Generally, when we file the return, we have some liability. Ad hoc means without any calculation, saying that some amount has to be paid. वरना फिर वो क्या भाग जाएगा. So in this case, there is a liability in case of recovery. But in case of investigation and enforcement, they are just doing the investigation. They don't know how much is the liability. So whatever ad hoc amount they decide, that can be made payment. That is called as ad hoc amount. Who is appointed the recovery officer and professor of government itself? The central board itself are the each state government. They have their own jurisdiction, commercial taxes department. They will appoint this recovery officers and proper officers. Clear till here? वेरी गुड. एडॉक डिपॉजिट मींस रैंडम अमाउंट अम्बेश्वरी, जहां पे किसी का कैलकुलेशन नहीं होता है. ठीक है. जब वो इन्वेस्टिगेशन करने के लिए आते हैं, इन्फोर्समेंट के लिए आते हैं, तब उनको लगता है कि कुछ अमाउंट पे करना है, तब वो जो अमाउंट पे कराते हैं उसे कहते हैं एडॉक अमाउंट. ओके. चलान की क्या फीचर्स है? इट्स अ इलेक्ट्रॉनिकली जनरेटेड चलान विथ फॉर ऑल थ्री मोड्स, दैट इज कैश, क्रेडिट कार्ड या फिर चेक. इलेक्ट्रॉनिकली जनरेटेड चलान, उसमें क्या होता है? इट हैज अ यूनिक 14 डिजिट कॉमन पोर्टल आइडेंटिफिकेशन नंबर. ओके. सो चलान में क्या होता है? 14 डिजिट सीपिन नंबर होता है, कॉमन पोर्टल आइडेंटिफिकेशन नंबर. चलान कौन जनरेट कर सकता है? टैक्स पेयर जनरेट कर सकता है, उसका ऑथराइज रिप्रेजेंटेटिव या डिपार्टमेंटल ऑफिसर्स और एनी अदर पर्सन पेइंग टैक्स ऑन बिहाफ ऑफ द टैक्स पेयर. ये कोई भी जनरेट कर सकता है. आप जनरेट कर सकते हो, आपका रिप्रेजेंटेटिव जनरेट कर सकता है, डिपार्टमेंट ऑफिसर जब एनफोर्समेंट के लिए आते हैं तब वो जनरेट कर सकते हैं. पेमेंट तो आपको करना पड़ेगा, लेकिन वो जनरेट चलान कर सकते हैं. पेमेंट तो टैक्स पेयर को ही करना पड़ेगा, लेकिन जनरेटिंग ऑफ दिस चलान कौन कर सकता है? टैक्स पेयर, रिप्रेजेंटेटिव, ऑथराइज्ड रिप्रेजेंटेटिव, departmental officers or any other paying person paying tax on behalf of the taxpayer. That is, auction कुछ करते हो, आपके goods auction करते हो, तब वो auctioneer चलान generate कर सकता है. ठीक है. So there are four kinds of people who can generate the challan. And in the challan, what gets generated? I'll show you a challan also. In that, the name, address, email ID, and GSTN of the taxpayer gets auto-populated. Now, the how does the challan work? What does authorized representative means? That is, you have a option of CTP, that is certified tax practitioner, who is can be a chartered accountant, company secretary, a lawyer, or a person who writes a exam. Okay, so they are called as certified tax practitioners. They will get a unique ID on GST portal. And when a taxpayer has to do some activities, he will assign this to this certified person. Okay, in the portal itself, you have this option saying that I want to um, add him as an authorized representative. Suppose I'm a chartered accountant, I'm a certified tax practitioner. From the login ID of the taxpayer, he will add me as an authorized representative. Once he adds me, then I will have access to some features of the taxpayer. I can file the returns. I can at least fill the returns. He will have to file it. I can generate the challan. He will have to make the payment. So a authorized representative is a person who is authorized to do certain actions of a taxpayer. Okay. So why challan when returns are there? So returns will give you the liability, and challan will give you the breakup, saying that we have major heads and minor heads. What is CGST, SGST, IGST? Then under CGST we have tax, interest, and penalty. So what you have to pay will be mentioned in the challan. So that's the reason challan is important. From challan, it will go to the cash ledger. From the cash ledger, it will go and offset with your liability, which is coming from your returns. Okay. Can I generate challan without login because of any other person generate on my taxpayer? You have to log in, or your authorized representative has to log in. One of you have to log in. Okay. In this challan, you don't have to generate separate challan for CGST, separate IGST, CGST. In one challan itself, you have options of CGST, SGST, IGST, and cess. You can key in all that in one challan itself. Okay. And once you generate a challan, make the payment, else it will be there. It will be valid for 15 days. After that, it will get deleted. So you have to generate the challan, and within 15 days, either make the payment or do the NEFT transfers. Okay. After that, the challan will get wiped out. But the effect comes only when you make the payment. So once you make the payment, only then the challan is valid. Challan would not have a jurisdictional locational code. Tax authorities would send the taxpayer's updated master data to GSTN. So there is nothing called whom it will go to, the which authority it will go. There is no mention of your jurisdiction. What is jurisdiction? मतलब आपका जो है GSTN किसी एक ऑफिसर को मैप किया गया है, करेक्ट? बिकॉज इतने सारे टैक्स ऑफिसर्स हैं, each officer will be mapped to you. So that mapping is called as jurisdiction. That mapping will not be there in the challan because you have a GSTI number. So whatever GST in number, the number what we get when you register, that is sufficient. And an unregistered person, a casual taxable person, or a NRTP pays on the basis of GST nahi hai unke paas because he is unregistered, and who is a casual taxable person. Before taking registration, he has to make the payment. So how will he make the payment? Through this TIN. What is TIN? Temporary identification number. Through this temporary identification number, he will make the payment. Basic payment process is that challan can be edited before finalization. Before you make the payment, you want to edit it, you can do it. Once you finalize and CPIN is generated, then you cannot change it. Before generation of CPIN, you can do it. And time of payment is 0 hours to 8 hours. After this, if you make the payment, you will get the next day. Okay, but you can still make the payment. System of electronic cash ledger on GSTN for each taxpayer. CIN gets generated on successful. Once it will be CPIN. Once you make the payment, that will get converted to CIN. The CIN does not get generated when the person makes a representation through the portal in PMT07. And because that is only if there is some failure, you can inform it. That is the basic part, saying that you have made the payment. The amount is got debited from your bank account, but in your electronic cash ledger that does not come. So you can raise a query through PMT07. The electronic cash ledger has major heads and minor heads. Major heads is the type of taxes: CGST, IGST, SGST or UTGST, and cess. These are the major heads. And then you have minor heads: tax, interest, penalty. So amounts available under the major head cannot be offset with others. So if I have to make payment of tax of CGST and SGST, 10,000 rupees each, by mistake, if I would have made payment under IGST, I could not have utilized, because the major head was different. But from 1st January 2020, that is GST came in 2017, but till 2020, that was the problem. From 1st January 2020, they brought in a system wherein through PMT09, you can transfer the amount what is deposited in a major head to a minor head, from one major head to another major head. Suppose in my example, I said that 10,000 CGST and 10,000 SGST has to be made. But I made payment of 10,000 in SGST and 10,000 in IGST. Now I can transfer from IGST to CGST through this PMT09. Okay, so there is no problem now. But while making the payment, why do you want to make 2 attempts? So make the payment under correct head. If you have made any mistake, you have to file this PMT09 and transfer the head from the wrong head to the correct head. Okay, because if there is any liability for payment of interest and in your electronic cash ledger, the amount is sitting in the tax column, you will not be able to utilize. So you will have to transfer from tax to interest. From interest only, it will get offset, because your liability register is like your ledgers. From one ledger, you cannot offset with other ledger. So you have to have the correct ledgers. That's why major head and minor head is very important. So this is this PMT09, which is now permitted. GST payment, of course, when you will make the payment by 20th of the subsequent month, along with filing of returns, that is a basic thing. Composition taxpayer will be on a quarterly basis, and QRMP also will be on a monthly basis, but filing will be on a quarterly basis. QRMP stands for quarterly return, monthly payments. We will make the payment monthly, but filing will happen on a quarterly basis. What are the various terms? CPIN, CIN, BRN. So these are the terms. But major part, what I want to tell you is GST will direct the taxpayer to the website of the selected bank. How do you make the payment? This workflow will help you to understand first. The taxpayer will first go to the GST. He will make the enter the details and generate the e-challan, which is called as CPIN. From CPIN, he will make the choose the mode of payment, either net banking, credit card, UPI. Then he will make the payment. Then a CIN will get generated. So first CPIN gets generated and then a CIN. This CIN shows that there's a confirmation and this will get reported back to GST number, and this GST number will show it in the taxpayer's cash ledger. Okay, in the cash ledger, once a CIN is generated, this will appear in the cash ledger. Okay. Then, so this is the process: first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and the seventh. Now, how does the CPIN and CIN looks is what we will see here. So this is how a CPIN looks like. It will have a term called PMT06. PMT06, which is payment challan for deposit of goods and service tax. It will generate a CPIN, which means that it is just generated and it has a expiry date of 15 days from the date of generation. Details of the taxpayer will appear, the GSTI number, name of the entity, email ID, address, mobile number, then details of payment. Here you have this major head and minor head. In major head, what else do we have? This is major head, that is CGST, IGST, cess, and SGST. Since this is in Karnataka, Karnataka state will come over. So this is major head, and these are the minor heads. Minor head will be tax, interest, penalty, fees, and others. So I will generate this and select the option e-payment, over the counter, or NEFT, basis which the challan gets generated. So this is the CPIN. Okay. Once you make the payment, particulars of deposit will come later on. So this is a draft of the main challan. So once I generate this payment challan, I make the payment successfully, then CIN gets generated. Okay, are you able to see the CIN? That challan, which was there in CPIN, which was called as CPIN. Now here it becomes CPIN number and a CIN is generated. Okay, so this is called the payment receipt. CIN gets generated, name, same detail comes in, and the amount gets finalized here. So once a CIN is generated, this is the actual payment of tax. Again, major head and minor head is here. This will generate additional things like CIN number. It will also generate a BRN number, which is bank reference number. Okay. Somebody was asking, Hardik was asking, can you please explain concept of PMT09? So when you see this transaction of major head and minor head, Hardik, that we know that major head and minor head should be correct. Now, instead of paying this 3,40,003 under CGST, had I made the payment under cess, can I utilize? I cannot utilize. So to move that from the wrong head of cess to CGST, or in this case, CGST is paid, it should have been cess. So I will move it through filing a form called PMT09. I will tell wrong head was CGST, right head was cess. Once you mention the current amount in the cess, then in your electronic cash ledger, the amount will move from CGST to the cess amount. That is PMT09. Electronic credit ledger, you cannot transfer Bhaskar. Only cash ledger, you can use PMT09. Yeah, kind of alteration form, you could say. PMT09 is a correction form. Minor to minor, yes. Major to major, major to minor, minor to major. For everything, you will use the PMT09 itself. Okay. We'll take a break of 10 minutes here and we'll come back. We'll discuss more on utilization of ITC and calculation of interest under GST. pay. Like I am registered person, I pay tax, I purchase the machine, I sold the machine, 3 years reversal, that answer, but will continue to pay tax out of substance. It's correct. You're right, Hardik. Okay. So, rules for utilization, amount available, I have told you. In the cash ledger, we can utilize for making any payment of taxes, interest, penalty, fees, or any other amount. So cash is your cash. You make the payment, you can utilize it for anything. Credit ledger, whatever is the amount available in the credit ledger, you can utilize for making payment of only tax and only tax. Credit ledger cannot be utilized for payment and of tax and a reverse charge also. So the credit in your credit ledger, you can utilize only for making payment of output tax. Even RCM tax, you cannot make payment through your credit ledger. So there is very restrictive use. क्रेडिट लेजर को आप किसके लिए यूज कर सकते हो? सिर्फ आपके आउटपुट टैक्स पेमेंट करने के लिए. नाउ इलेक्ट्रॉनिक इनपुट क्रेडिट लेजर, जैसे इलेक्ट्रॉनिक क्रेडिट लेजर का फुल नाम हो गया इलेक्ट्रॉनिक इनपुट क्रेडिट लेजर, या उसे इलेक्ट्रॉनिक क्रेडिट लेजर भी कहते हैं. उसमें क्या होता है, आईटीसी जो सेल्फ असेस्ड है और अपने मंथली रिटर्न में मेंशन करते हैं, दैट गेट्स क्रेडिटेड इन योर इलेक्ट्रॉनिक क्रेडिट लेजर. दिस कैन बी यूटिलाइज ओनली टुवर्ड्स पेमेंट ऑफ टैक्स, दैट इज ओनली आउटपुट टैक्स. टैक्स अंडर आरसीएम कैन नॉट बी पेड, बट द आरसीएम वंस पेड, once you make the RCM payment, that comes as a part of your credit in your credit ledger. Okay, so the RCM, once you make the payment, that gets added to your credit in the electronic credit ledger, and it can be utilized only towards output tax. Output tax का definition भी दिया गया है. Output tax means the tax which is chargeable under this act on the taxable supply of goods or services made by him or his agent, and it specifically यहाँ पे definition में दिया गया है, it excludes tax payable by him on reverse charge. That's why reverse charge का payment excluded है output tax के definition में. Now ITC utilization rules, rule 49, 5A, 5B or 5C. These are the utilization rules. It simply says, very simply, very easy to understand, that the IGST credit should be set off with your IGST liability. IGST credit, if available, after you have set off your IGST liability, उसके बाद अगर कुछ क्रेडिट बचता है, उसे आप CGST और उसे आप SGST के लिए भी यूज कर सकते हो in any proportion. ओके, सो IGST का अगर क्रेडिट है और आपका IGST का लायबिलिटी है, तब उसके क्रेडिट को, आईजीएसटी के क्रेडिट को आप आईजीएसटी लायबिलिटी के साथ यूटिलाइज करोगे फर्स्ट. फिर अगर कुछ बैलेंस रहता है तब सीजीएसटी और एसजीएसटी के लायबिलिटी पे करने के लिए यूज करोगे. ऐसा नहीं है कि आपका आईजीएसटी लायबिलिटी है, आपने आईजीएसटी क्रेडिट को आईजीएसटी लायबिलिटी के साथ यूज नहीं किया और सीजीएसटी के और एसजीएसटी के साथ यूज किया, वो नहीं चलेगा. ठीक है, फिर क्या होता है, सीजीएसटी का क्रेडिट है उसे आप ऑफसेट करोगे सीजीएसटी लायबिलिटी से. So like with the like itself. So you will utilize CGST credit with the CGST liability. Then if something is available, you can offset with the IGST. Correct? This we have seen with numbers also. Then SGST ka credit also is a similar manner. SGST ka credit you can utilize with the SGST liability. If there is any balance available, then you will offset with the IGST liability. So in effect, what is happening? CGST is not getting offset with SGST. Correct. We have read this with the ITC topic. So just a brush up. The important aspect is there is no proportion saying that CGST, IGST के बाद यूटिलाइज करने के बाद आपको CGST करना पड़ेगा फिर SGST, ऐसा नहीं है. CGST and SGST in any proportion you can utilize for the balance in the IGST amount. So the same chart, IGST input tax credit जो है उसे आप IGST liability के साथ offset करोगे, फिर CGST and SGST in any proportion. Then CGST liability you will utilize with the CGST and then balance with the IGST. Then SGST you will utilize with the SGST liability first and then with the IGST. So this chart explains it all. Correct? Now, common pointers both for electronic cash ledger and credit ledger is when a refund is claimed, the refund amount needs to be debited to the extent of the refund claim. जब भी आप refund के लिए claim के लिए apply करते हो, then very important that your refund amount needs to be debited to the extent of the refund claim. Suppose I'm a exporter. Now I am doing export and I have calculated that out of 1 lakh rupees credit ledger what I have, 80,000 is my refund. So I will apply for refund. At the time of applying for refund, 80,000 should be debited. I have to debit 80,000 because it will get a refund. But I have not got the refund today, but still the rule says that you have to debit to the extent of the refund what you have applied. Because same refund you should not be applying twice. So you will debit the extent of the refund application. That happens automatically when you file the refund claim. It will take you through your electronic credit ledger and it will tell you to debit it. To the extent of the refund application, that much of the balance in your electronic credit ledger has to be debited. Only then you can go for refund. Okay. And when you do this is happening in the credit ledger itself. Refund to the extent which gets rejected will be credited to the respective electronic cash ledger or credit ledger by way of an order. Now, you're an exporter. You have inputs, output, taxes 0, and it is a 0 rated supply. So 1 lakh credit you have, you will apply for refund of 80,000 rupees. Full refund you cannot apply because there is a formula and procedure which is to be followed, based on which you are getting a refund of 80,000 rupees. So if you're getting a application for 80,000 rupees, you will debit your electronic credit ledger to that extent. So you will debit 80,000 rupees and you will apply. If the officer sanctioned 80,000, that you will get in your bank account. Now, for some calculation reason, the officer is saying that no, you're eligible for only 60,000 rupees. So 60,000, he'll give it in your bank account. 20,000 rupees, he will debit it back in your credit ledger. So that is what this pointer is saying, that when you apply for refund, debit your electronic credit ledger to the extent of the refund what you applied for, and whatever is sanctioned that will come to your cash ledger because you have asked refund, because your already credit ledger has so much of balance, you asked for a refund and there is a calculation error and things, then it will come back. Class. So the balance will come back to your cash ledger. So whatever is the shortage will come back to your electronic credit ledger back, because it started from the credit ledger and it will circulate back to your credit ledger. Just one moment. Clear on this refund aspect? Now, restriction on utilization of ITC. These pointers are important because these are all the amended rules. I mean, these are the things which is practically applicable. So this becomes important for us to understand. Rule 86A and Rule 88B. Rule 86A says that the commissioner or any officer not below the rank of an assistant commissioner who is authorized by him is empowered to impose restrictions on utilization of ITC available in the credit ledger. That is, whatever credit ledger is there in your electronic credit ledger, that will get locked. When will it get locked? if the officer has reasons to believe that your ITC has been fraudulently availed. मतलब जो आपका credit ledger है, that is not become your credit ledger, it will become a closed credit ledger. And there will be restrictions saying that you have availed the ITC fraudulently. Then the commissioner or any officer up to the rank of assistant commissioner can lock your credit ledger in the following circumstances. What are the circumstances? When the ITC has been availed on the basis of tax invoice or invalid documents, and it is issued by a valid document but issued by a non-existent supplier. Your credit is available, but the person who gave you the credit does not exist. So it's a fake invoice case, that person does not exist but he's given you a credit. Without receiving the goods, you have received it. Matlab, every condition of input tax credit has to be satisfied, but in this case, it is not satisfied. You have not received the goods, or you have received the credit without a supplier existing. The tax has not been paid by the supplier. Okay. The basic condition why government is giving you a credit, because they have got the tax. But in this case, the government itself has not got the tax and you have claimed the credit. So your credit becomes fraudulent. And the second condition is fourth condition is the registered person availing the ITC. You have availed the ITC, but the condition is you should be in possession of tax invoice. When they are asking, you don't have it. In these four circumstances, your credit ledger will be locked. That is called as restriction of utilization of credit. You can see the credit ledger, but you cannot utilize it. Okay. It's like you're having cash in the bank, but you cannot withdraw. Right. So Rule 86A says that these are the restrictions for utilization of ITC, wherein your credit cannot be utilized. Now, the restrictions, whatever we have said, when you have claimed a credit, then it will be locked for how long? For 1 year. Even if you have, because credit is like a statutory right. You have been given a right under the GST law, and GST law has got the powers from the Constitution. And Constitution says that, yes, you have to give the credit. So you're getting the credit from the GST law. And once the credit is given, they cannot take it back from you, because it's a right which was given under the law, saying that every registered person who is following the conditions of Section 16, you will get the credit. Now, once you have given the credit, how can you take it back? You can't take it back because you have done things fraudulently. Yes, I've done things fraudulently, but still you cannot give a permanent restriction. So that's why they are saying that this restriction will be imposed for a period of 1 year. After 1 year, it will be opened up. Again, if you find that, yes, you have done fraudulent transactions, again, another restriction will be imposed. Okay. Persons who make fake vouchers, for them, is there any restrictions? Everybody, yes. The supplier who is making, for him, there will not be any restriction, because for him also, he will also utilize ITC from some other fake person. So the restriction will be imposed on him also, but from his supply perspective, that restriction may not apply. For him, there will be a recovery which will happen, saying that whatever taxes you have collected, you have not paid the taxes on it, so I will recover from you. Okay, so they will recover from it. Restriction happens only on the input tax portion, because input tax is what is the benefit you are claiming. So this ITC will be restricted for everybody. Okay, the other common points on cash ledger is what we have discussed, that when a person has claimed a refund, such amount will be debited from the cash ledger. And if the refund is rejected, the balance will be debited to his electronic credit ledger bank. A unique identification number will be generated for each debit and credit, and a unique identification number for discharge of liabilities also generated. कमिश्नर को कैसे पता चलता है कि आईटीसी फ्रॉडलेंट क्लेम किया? करेक्ट माही, So, based on the investigation, that's why the GST officers have intelligence department, investigation department, and they can trace out. Because when you buy some goods, you have to prove that you have actually bought it. You should have the physical movement of the goods apart from ITC conditions. Okay, based on your track record. If you are a regular dealer, okay, you will see that goods are physically existing, employees are there, members are there, vendors are there, right? In case of a fraudulent fake transactions, all of these things will not be there. That's when through intelligence they can find out that this is a fake invoicing transaction. जैसे किसी ने रिफंड अप्लाई कर दिया फेक इनपुट क्रेडिट लेके, राइट? तो उसमें उनको पता चल जाता है कि ही इज नॉट अ रेगुलर बिजनेस पर्सन, ही इज डूइंग इट वन टाइम पर्सन, बिकॉज अ पर्सन हु इज अ जेन्युइन पर्सन, he will not do it one time, he'll do it regularly. So various criteria are there. I'm just giving you a few examples. Based on these criteria, the GST intelligence wing will get to know that it's a fraudulent cases. जहां पे भी fraudulent cases है उसका credit block कर दिया जाता है. Electronic liability register will have output minus input जो net liability है, that will be in the electronic liability register. The amount of tax, interest, penalty or any other amount payable will be determined by the proper officer in pursuance of any proceedings. Rules shall be applicable in the following order for discharging liability. How do you discharge the liability? Whatever is the self-assessed liability of the previous tax period, जो भी आपके पुराने returns में liability है, वो first pay कीजिए, फिर करंट मंथ के टैक्स पीरियड पे कीजिए. ऐसा नहीं है कि आपने पुराने तो रिटर्न फाइल नहीं किया और इस महीने का रिटर्न फाइल करना है, दैट विल नॉट बी परमिटेड. You have to file and clear all your dues under the old liability. Whatever are the dues related to your previous tax period, that has to be paid first. Then the dues related to current tax period has to be paid. And then if there is any demand, that has to be paid. जैसे कोई डिमांड आ गया है और आपका करंट टैक्स पीरियड का भी ड्यूज है, तो फिर आपको करंट टैक्स पीरियड का ड्यूज पे करके फिर the demand under 73 or 74 pay karna. What is 73 and 74? These are the demand provisions. Okay, the any demand what will be raised under section 73 or 74. जो मैंने आपको बताया था कि officers can do adjudication. That adjudication मतलब assessment. In income tax we called assessment, here it is called adjudication. So जो भी adjudication करेंगे वो section 73 और 74 में करेंगे. That adjudication का डिमांड जो है दैट हैज टू बी पेड आफ्टर यू मेक द पेमेंट ऑफ योर करंट टैक्स पीरियड का लायबिलिटी. Electronic credit ledger can be made for making payment of any GST. You are sleeping, Sabah Shakil. I said credit ledger can be utilized only for making payment of the tax. Any tax only, not interest. So I will give you the next slide to give you some clarity on this. So electronic credit ledger. In credit ledger, what will be the credit? Addition जो है credit है your input tax, और उसका डेबिट क्या होगा? पेमेंट ऑफ ऑल लायबिलिटीज. ओके, इलेक्ट्रॉनिक ऑफ ऑल द टैक्स लायबिलिटीज ऑफ अ रजिस्टर्ड पर्सन एज पर हिज रिटर्न. ठीक है. Then electronic cash ledger will be credit of whatever payments we make and the TDS and TCS. And then debit will be payment of all the liabilities of a registered person as per his return and other payments. ठीक है. Then what is called as other payments? When I say other payments, it will be other payments like TDS, TCS, RCM liability, amount payable under section 10, interest, penalty, fees. ये सभी क्या होगा? इलेक्ट्रॉनिक कैश लेजर से होगा. ठीक है. So if I have to draw a indicator for other payments, this is the part. This is other payments. ठीक है. And when I say electronic credit ledger, payment of all liabilities, this is basically tax liabilities, because credit ledger has that restriction that you can make the payment of only tax liabilities. So from your credit से debit होगा, ये credit से debit होगा. ये debit कहाँ पे जाएगा? that debit will go through the electronic liability register. So यहाँ का जो debit है, it will become a credit here because this is what is payable, amount debited from in the electronic liability register from our returns, the amount payable will come from that debit. These credit will go here and this will get offset. Like our how we used to do in our second POC, multiple ledgers, one ledger to other ledger getting closed, similar to that. So this electronic credit ledger will get closed. The debit here will go as a credit in your liability register. इस चार्ट को आप ठीक से पढ़िए, then you will understand the whole chapter. And any amount remaining in the electronic cash ledger after payment can be claimed as refund, but electronic balance in the electronic cash ledger cannot be claimed as refund by everyone. This is the crux of this chapter. Any doubts in this slide? Please go through it line by line. What is under section 10? Section 10. Section 10 is the amount what is payable by a composition taxpayer. Section 10 is the tax payable by a composition taxpayer. That is amount payable under section 10. He also cannot utilize this credit ledger. He has to pay it from the cash ledger itself. If someone deduct our TDS in GST, how will it be plus in cash ledger? So you will deposit your money in your cash ledger, will go to your cash ledger. Now, instead of you depositing in your cash ledger, somebody else has deducted it. Correct? So when somebody else has deducted that payment, which you have to make the payment, which they have to make payment to you, that will come as a credit in your cash ledger itself. Similar to our income tax TDS. In IT, payer will deduct and deposit to government. In GST, the seller will deduct and credit to cash ledger. Correct. He will also give it to the government, Hardik. Once he gives to the government, it will come to your cash ledger. हिंदी में एक्सप्लेन कर दीजिए श्रेया. ओके श्रेया, ये क्या होता है जब भी आप रिटर्न्स फाइल करते हो तब एक एक पॉइंट में ठीक से समझाता हूं आपको. ठीक है, आप जब जीएसटी या 3B फाइल करते हो तब आप इनपुट टैक्स लेते हो. तो जो भी इनपुट टैक्स लेते हो वो यहाँ पे क्रेडिट हो जाएगा. उसे कहते हैं इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट ऑन सेल्फ असेस बेसिस. मतलब आपने असेस करके आपका क्रेडिट लिया है तो वो आ जाएगा इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट. ठीक है, फिर क्रेडिट हो जाएगा. फिर जो भी क्रेडिट हो जाएगा उसे आप क्या करोगे, आपके लायबिलिटी में पे करोगे. आपके रिटर्न में ही लायबिलिटी आएगा, उसे आप पे कर दोगे. तो जो भी आपका क्रेडिट है, क्रेडिट आ गया. फिर पेमेंट है उसका डेबिट हो गया, क्रेडिट डेबिट हो गया। डेबिट क्या होता है? पेमेंट ऑफ ऑल लायबिलिटीज ऑफ अ रजिस्टर्ड पर्सन एज पर हिज रिटर्न। दोनों रिटर्न नहीं आएगा तो क्रेडिट जो है वो क्रेडिट क्लेम करोगे, लायबिलिटी जो है वो डेबिट कर दोगे। जो ये डेबिट होगा वो कहाँ पे जाएगा? इलेक्ट्रॉनिक लायबिलिटी रजिस्टर, क्योंकि आपका लायबिलिटी जो है यहाँ पर भी डेबिट होगा कि पेएबल दिख रहा है, और रिटर्न्स फाइल करते ही आपके क्रेडिट से लेके उसके लायबिलिटी में चला जाएगा, तो ये अकाउंट क्लोज हो जाएगा। सपोज क्रेडिट में आपके 1 लाख है, डेबिट में आपको 1 लाख है, तो 1 लाख 1 लाख माइनस हो गया। सपोज क्रेडिट आपका 1 लाख है, लायबिलिटी 80,000 है, तो फिर डेबिट आप 80,000 करोगे, बैलेंस 20,000 कैरी फॉरवर्ड हो जाएगा। ठीक है, फिर आ जाएंगे कैश लेजर में। सपोज आपका लायबिलिटी बनता है 2 लाख रुपए, आपके क्रेडिट में था 1 लाख, आपने 1 लाख यूटिलाइज कर लिया, बैलेंस 1 लाख आपको पे करना है, तो आप इलेक्ट्रॉनिक कैश लेजर में 1 लाख जमा कर दोगे। आप चालान क्रिएट करके पे करोगे, जब वो पे करोगे यहाँ पे आ जाएगा। ठीक है, उसके अलावा क्या है? टीडीएस और टीसीएस। जैसे किसी गवर्नमेंट को आपने कॉन्ट्रैक्ट दिया है, कोई गवर्नमेंट ने आपको कॉन्ट्रैक्ट दिया है, आप गवर्नमेंट को सप्लाई करते हो, तब गवर्नमेंट आपके अकाउंट से टीडीएस काट देगा आपके पेमेंट से। तो वो टीडीएस है वो यहाँ पे भी ऐड हो जाएगा कैश लेजर में। वैसे ही अगर आप ई कॉमर्स कंपनी के थ्रू डील करते हो तब वो टीसीएस डिडक्ट करते हैं, वो टीसीएस भी यहाँ पे इलेक्ट्रॉनिक कैश लेजर में क्रेडिट में आ जाएगा। ठीक है, ये दोनों जो कैश लेजर में है वो किसके लिए पे कर सकते हो? आप टैक्स के लिए पे कर सकते हो, इसीलिए यहाँ पे कहा है पेमेंट ऑफ ऑल लायबिलिटीज, या अदर पेमेंट्स के लिए यूज कर सकते हो। अदर पेमेंट्स क्या है वो बाद में समझाता हूँ। तो कैश लेजर में क्या होता है? जो भी आप कैश जमा करते हो, टीडीएस और टीसीएस क्रेडिट में ऐड हो जाएंगे, फिर डेबिट में वो रिड्यूस हो जाएंगे। ठीक है, वो क्या हो जाएगा? आपके लायबिलिटी, जो आपका लायबिलिटी बनता है उसके साथ ऑफसेट हो जाएगा। ठीक है, और यहाँ पे अदर पेमेंट्स क्या होता है? इलेक्ट्रॉनिक क्रेडिट लेजर आप किसके लिए यूज कर सकते हो? क्रेडिट लेजर सिर्फ टैक्स पेमेंट के लिए यूज कर सकते हो, लेकिन कैश लेजर जो है आपको सिर्फ टैक्स नहीं, टैक्स के अलावा टीडीएस पेमेंट, टीसीएस पेमेंट, रिवर्स चार्ज, एनी पेमेंट बाय अ कॉम्पोजिट टैक्स पेयर, एनी इंटरेस्ट पेनाल्टी भी सब कुछ पे करना है, जो आपको कैश लेजर से ही यूज कर सकते हो। ठीक है, now we'll go to the presumption. ठीक है, this is saying that every person who's made the payment is, what is RCM liability? जो रिवर्स चार्ज हमारे प्रोविजंस ऑन चार्ज में आप देख लीजिए, देयर यू विल गेट टू नो व्हाट इज रिवर्स चार्ज लायबिलिटी, वेयर सप्लायर पेज normal taxes, when the receiver pays it is called as RCM liability, reverse charge mechanism liability. When every person who has paid the tax to the government shall, unless the contrary is proved, shall be deemed to have passed on the incident. मतलब if somebody is paying the taxes, it is always assumed that the taxes is borne by the receiver. That is what section 49(9) is saying. Then section advantages of due tax payment. These are some theoretical aspect. Now interest. Let's come to the important aspect of interest. Interest shall be payable in case where a person fails to pay the tax or any part thereof to the government. So interest will be payable at the notified rate, and the rate notified for payment of interest is 18%. Now this 18% is a per annum rate. For any delay, now by 20th you have to make the payment of taxes, you have delayed it by 1 day. So for that 1 day, you have to pay interest at 18% per annum. Matlab, if you have to pay tax liability of 1 lakh rupees, you will multiply 1 lakh into 18% into 1 divided by 365 days. Why? Because this interest is, rate of interest is 18% per annum. We will have to calculate for the number of days of delay. In my example, I have delayed by 1 day. So I will multiply by 1 by 365. Okay. Now, new provision is added here, which says that except in cases where proceedings are initiated under 73 and 74, the interest will be provided. Interest will be charged only on the net cash liability and not on the gross tax liability. Interest is only on the net cash liability and not on the gross tax payable. Which means what? We need to have some discussion over here on the numbers, but I have an example. So we will not discuss much. Just understand here. If you have a liability of 1 lakh rupees, okay, and you have credit in your credit ledger of 40,000 rupees, you have delayed filing. So the interest will be payable on what value? Liability is 1 lakh rupees. The balance in your electronic credit ledger through which you have made this payment is 40,000 rupees. And balance tax payable is 60,000 rupees. And there is a delay of 1 month. So how much will be the interest? Correct. Interest will be on 60,000 rupees because you already have the balance in your credit ledger and you're making the payment through your electronic credit. Whatever payment you're making through your credit balance, on that there will not be any interest calculated. So 60,000 into 18% into 1 by 12 because there's a delay of 1 month. 30 by 365 or 1 by 12 makes it better. Yes. So the interest will be 900 rupees. If it is monthly delay, then you calculate 1 by 12 instead of number of days. Here, that is what this provision is saying. Interest will be calculated on the net cash liability or not on gross tax liability, except when the provisions under 73 or 74 मतलब अगर कुछ assessment वगैरह कर दिया है, then this will not apply. This will be on the total tax payable. If it is for a delay in the return, then it will be under 73 or 74. Then interest shall be calculated from the day succeeding on the day on which tax was due to be paid. मतलब उस दिन का अगर 20th को ड्यू है फिर 21st से you will calculate the interest. Then interest shall be payable in case where the taxable person makes any undue or excess claim of ITC or reduction of output tax liability at such rate not exceeding 24%. मतलब if you are claimed wrong input tax credit, then the interest will be calculated and that is 24%. Now it is revised to 18%. So for your exam, it will be 18% itself. Here. Now interest, how do you calculate that liable to pay in accordance with the provisions of the Act? The notification says 18%. Gross liability or net liability is basically output tax is 2,70,000, input tax is 1,67,000. So your gross liability and net liability would mean what? Gross liability means 2,70,000 rupees. Net liability means 2,70,000 minus 1,67,000. That is net liability. Okay. Now they've added a provision which says that interest on tax payable in respect of supplies made during a tax period and declared in the return for the said period furnished after the due date with the provisions except when return is furnished after commencement of 73 or 74 shall be payable on the portion of tax that is paid by debiting the cash ledger. I will give you an example to understand this. Say, for example, payment of tax and filing of monthly return is for April 2019. The due date is 20th May. Okay. Now, in this scenario, let's take various cases. In case 1, payment and filing was done on 18th May. When was the due date? 20th May. Now, I have made the filing on 18th May. My gross output tax was 10 lakhs and my ITC was 7 lakh. So, in this case, what will be the interest? Purva is saying 2664. अपूर्व कैसे आता है 2664? Vaikunta Maina is saying 30,000 into 18% per annum interest, 4,500. Interest is on late filing na sir, 18th May to not filing hai. Correct. So there is no late filing here. Just because my heading says late filing, you should not start calculating interest. Okay, there is no delay over here. Due date is 20th and I'll file it on 18th, so there is no interest. Second case, payment and filing was done on 28th August. Gross tax liability is 10 and ITC is 7 lakhs. In this case, what is the interest payable? Okay, various amounts are going. Basically, the calculation will be 3 lakh rupees into 18% into 100 divided by 365 days. Correct? You have to calculate interest on 3 lakhs because ITC you have utilized 7 lakhs. There's no 8 days delay, no? May, June, July, August. The delay is not, somebody is saying due date for August should be 20th August. Correct, due date for August, but the due date is for May, no? We are filing return for May. I didn't say that this is filing of August. This is same April, case 1 and case 2. 100 days point is not clear. 100 days point, I've explained it here, Mahi. From 21st May to 28th August. How many days? 100 days. 14,795. Okay, so the answer is 14,795. Clear here? Now we'll go to the scenario of 88B. Now 88B comes and says that if the tax has been belatedly paid through credit balance, then interest to be paid for the period of delay in filing the said return beyond the due date and interest will be computed on the tax paid by debiting the cash ledger. So हमने किया था उसी को उन्होंने theoretically बोला है कि जो आप कैश लेजर से पे करते हो उसके ऊपर इंटरेस्ट आएगा एंड अमाउंट ऑफ टैक्स विच रिमेन्स अनपेड उसके ऊपर ही आएगा. Again, we'll take an example to understand this. April month, due date is May. Return period is April. Supplies declared in tax period pertaining to April. जो मैंने April सेल किया उसको मैंने April के returns में दिखा दिया है. What is the amount? 10,000 rupees. Actual filing date is 1st June. Payment made through credit ledger is 6,000 and payment made through cash ledger is 4,000. इंटरेस्ट आई एम नॉट आस्किंग यू इंटरेस्ट कैलकुलेशन ईयर, जस्ट अंडरस्टैंड, क्योंकि कैलकुलेटर को हम कभी भी यूज कर सकते हैं बट समझना इंपॉर्टेंट है. इंटरेस्ट विल बी कैलकुलेटेड ऑन व्हाट वैल्यू? 6,000. सम महाशय बोल रहे 6,000. वॉट एवर पेमेंट वी मेक फ्रॉम द ग्रॉस आउटपुट. वाई ग्रॉस आउटपुट पल्लवी? Everybody else is saying 4,000 rupees. Two people are saying that it is on 6,000 and one is saying it is on 10,000. Only net liability, correct. So interest will be calculated on zero. Why zero now? What is this answer now? It will not be on zero. There is a delay. So it will be on 4,000 rupees. Whatever you're making payment from your cash ledger, on that you have to calculate the interest. Now, second scenario, return is filed for the month of April, but the supplies you made in March, you have not declared in March returns. Okay. How much is the amount? There's only one sale, because had there been multiple sales, they would have mentioned. The March sales you're declaring in April, the sales value of March was 15,000 rupees. Now you're making payment through electronic credit ledger 10,000, cash ledger 5,000. Your interest will be calculated on what value? Yes, Hardik, I will upload the PPT of the previous chapter and current chapter today itself. Okay, in this case, the interest has to be calculated on 15,000. That is where this rule 88B comes in place. It says that when you're declaring and filing the return late for the current month, okay, then it is fine. But if you're declaring returns and in the returns of this month, sales for the previous month, then this benefit you will not get. You will get this benefit of payment on the net liability only when the current month sales is declared in the current month's return. But if previous month sales are declared in current month's return, for that sale of previous months, you will not get this benefit. Understood here the difference between this and this? It will be on gross. So previous year's turnover, if you include in current year's turnover and file it late, then benefit of net liability will come. But if previous year turnover, if you include in subsequent month's return, then the net interest on net liability benefit you will not get. Okay. So some more questions. Sir, if I declare September month sales in October, then net. And if it is declared in March month, then gross. No, if you declare September month sales in October, still it is on gross. If September's month return sales you declare in September's month's return, then it is on net. Clear, Hardik? मैडम ग्रॉस और नेट जो मैंने एग्जांपल्स दिए आप उसको देखिए तब आपको पता चल जाएगा वो स्लाइड्स जब आप मैं भेजूंगा और उसको फिर से पढ़िए तब आपको समझ में आ जाएगा ग्रॉस और नेट का टर्म्स है आपको किसके ऊपर टैक्स पे करना है इंटरेस्ट पे करना है इलेक्ट्रॉनिक क्रेडिट लेजर कम करके करेंगे तब उसे कहते हैं नेट जब पूरे आउटपुट लायबिलिटी को आप टैक्स पे करते हो उसे बनते हैं ग्रॉस September month return file in October. You have to say it as a September return itself. Okay. September returns don't consider the date of filing for which month it pertains. That is important. Now, credit of IGST, section 53 and section 18 of the IGST says that when credit of IGST has been utilized for payment of CGST, it has to be restored to the CGST. Correct? क्योंकि आपने एक स्टेट से आईजीएसटी यूटिलाइज करके सीजीएसटी पे किया है तो फिर उस स्टेट को सीजीएसटी जाना चाहिए सिमिलरली द क्रेडिट ऑफ एसजीएसटी जो यूटिलाइज करते हो आप पेमेंट ऑफ आईजीएसटी के लिए उसमें आईजीएसटी रिस्टोर करना चाहिए दिस रिस्टोरेशन जो गवर्नमेंट को सेटलमेंट करना होता है वो 53 में दिया गया है ठीक है आईजीएसटी जो हमने बताया था चार्ट के थ्रू जब एक स्टेट से दूसरे स्टेट के लिए सप्लाई करते हैं देन द क्रेडिट मूव्स right the cgst moves as igst so that state should get the benefit or that state will move the credit from cgst to igst because it is consumption based tax so that's why that movement and settlement happens through this section 53 how does this happen if you have any output gst and you have utilized output cgst then cgst is payable now then when the cycle goes up and this credit is available all right this somebody is utilizing the cgst so this credit has to go to the respective state that transfer is what is called as section 53 now section 53 is transfer of credit section 53 says that any ITC of IGST which is used for payment of CGST, the amount equivalent to the ITC so used is transferred by the central government from the IGST account to the CGST account. Similarly, ITC of IGST, if you are utilized for payment of SGST, amount equivalent to ITC so used is transferred by the central government from IGST account to the respective SGST account. Correct? Because state government should not get burdened. When somebody is utilizing the IGST and paying my taxes, I have not got the credit. So the central government will transfer the credit और फ्रॉम द यूटिलाइजेशन ऑफ आईजीएसटी वो स्टेट से लेके मुझे स्टेट को देगा दैट इज व्हाट सेक्शन 53 टॉक्स ऑल अबाउट Clear? So this is only saying that transfer of credit from one state to another state, or from the center to the state. The amount equivalent to the ITC, which is utilized, should be transferred by the central government from the IGST account to the CGST account, or from the IGST account to the SGST account. That is what 53 and section 18 of the IGST is saying. Clear? Now we have some 5 MCQs on our study. What of the following is not a permissible mode of deposit in the electronic cash ledger? Clear. Very good. Correct. Correct. Everybody is giving a correct answer. Very well understood. Except one is a wrong answer. Check deposit of rupees 25,000 over the counter is not permissible. What is the sequence of payment of taxes? Multiple answers. The correct answer is C. That is, first all dues related to previous tax period, then dues related to correct tax period, then 73 and 74. C, B, and A. How can payment of interest penalty and payment under reverse charge be made? Third one, yes, answer is B. Cross utilization of credit of available IGST after utilization towards payment of IGST is done in the following chronological order. Fourth one, answer is right. It is C. CGST, then SGST in any order. It could be our UTGST or CGST in any order. Fifth one, last question for the day. Which of the following statements is true? Fifth one, correct answer is C. ITC of CGST is first utilized for payment of CGST and balance is utilized for payment of IGST. Okay, so that brings an end to the topic of payment of tax. Thursday I will not be available, so we'll catch up again on next Tuesday. Any other questions? I'm not aware of the chapter weightage, Shreya. I'll just see that and I'll get back to you. Okay, thank you very much. Have a good weekend. See you next Tuesday.